The verdict of exile. They thought Earth was just another backwater world, a primitive planet with nothing but noise, chaos, and short-lived creatures. But they were wrong. Buried in our blood is the legacy of survival, a history written in fire and forged in hardship. When the stars finally noticed us, it wasn't our technology that terrified them. It was the terrifying truth that humans weren't born to run. They were raised to hunt. The trial chamber of the Galactic Council stretched before Commander Elena Vasquez like a vast cathedral of judgment. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose in perfect circles around the central platform. The architecture itself was designed to make the accused feel small, insignificant, and overwhelmed. Elena stood straight-backed in her crisp navy uniform, her dark hair pulled into a regulation bun, her brown eyes scanning the sea of hostile faces that surrounded her. To her left stood Captain Marcus Chen, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Marcus had fought in the border wars and commanded 3 different starships during his 20-year career. His black hair was streaked with silver, and a thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a reminder of the day he had saved an entire colony from raiders. To Elena's right, Ambassador Sarah O'Brien adjusted her diplomatic robes with steady hands. Sarah was younger than the others, barely 35. But her red hair and sharp green eyes had intimidated alien diplomats across the galaxy. The 3 humans stood alone at the center of the chamber, representing their entire species before the most powerful court in known space. Above them, the dome-shaped ceiling displayed a holographic map of the galaxy, with thousands of star systems twinkling like diamonds against the black void. Most of those systems belonged to the 3 great powers that controlled galactic civilization. High Magistrate Zethkar of the Zephyrian Empire spoke first. The crystalline being's body was composed of living glass that shifted through colors like a prism in sunlight. When it moved, musical tones rang through the chamber like wind chimes. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy's eastern sectors for 10,000 years, bringing order and stability to hundreds of worlds. They believed in perfect harmony, absolute law, and the elimination of chaos in all its forms. Humans, Zethkar's voice resonated through the crystal formations on its head. You stand accused of violating the Galactic Accords on 17 separate occasions. Your species has shown consistent disregard for established protocols, unauthorized military expansion, and most concerning of all, the repeated use of violence as a first resort rather than a last option. The chamber filled with a sound like static electricity as thousands of Zephyrians hummed their agreement. Their crystalline bodies flickered with synchronized light patterns, creating a hypnotic display that had intimidated many species into submission over the millennia. From the opposite side of the chamber, the Nethak Collective's primary speaker emerged from the writhing mass of insectoid bodies. The Nethaks moved as one organism, their individual minds connected through pheromone communication and shared consciousness. The speaker was larger than the others, with chitinous armor that gleamed like polished obsidian and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's lights in thousands of facets. The human disruption spreads like infection, the Nethak speaker clicked and hissed. They refuse integration. They resist assimilation. They maintain individual thought patterns that corrupt the harmony of neighboring species. Collective analysis indicates 97.3% probability of continued galactic destabilization if human expansion continues. The Nethak sections of the chamber erupted in a buzzing drone as millions of beings agreed in perfect unison. The sound was like standing inside a giant beehive, and several of the smaller alien species covered their auditory organs in discomfort. Finally, the Valdris Republic's representative materialized on the platform. The energy-based being appeared as a shifting cloud of light and electrical patterns, its form constantly changing, but somehow maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. The Valdris were the galaxy's oldest civilization, having evolved beyond physical, form millions of years ago. They spoke in harmonics that bypassed the ears entirely, their words appearing directly in the minds of those who listened. Humanity's emotional instability creates quantum fluctuations in local spacetime, the Valdris entity projected. Their unpredictable nature generates chaos fields that interfere with advanced technologies. Multiple Valdris research installations have reported equipment failures in systems with human presence. This species represents a fundamental incompatibility with civilized society. Elena felt her jaw tighten as she listened to the accusations. 20 years of service to the galactic community, and this was what they had to show for it. 20 years of human colonies providing food to hungry worlds, human ships responding to distress calls, human scientists sharing their discoveries freely with anyone who asked. But all they seemed to remember were the times humans had acted without waiting for permission, the times they had fought instead of negotiating, the times they had chosen to save lives rather than follow procedures. High Magistrate Zethkar raised one crystalline appendage, and the chamber fell silent. The evidence against humanity is overwhelming. However, in the interest of fairness, the accused will be permitted to present their defense. Commander Vasquez, you may address the council. Elena stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor. The platform beneath her feet began to rise, lifting her toward the center of the chamber until she stood level with the lowest tier of alien representatives. Thousands of eyes, sensors, and optical devices focused on her as she looked around the vast space. Honored representatives, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I stand before you not as a defendant, but as a representative of a species that has given everything to this galactic community. For 20 years, humanity has been a loyal member of the Galactic Council. We have followed your laws, paid our taxes, and contributed our resources to the common good. She turned toward the Zephyrian section. High Magistrate Zethkar, you speak of our disregard for protocols. But when the plague struck Kepler-7, it was human medical teams that worked for 36 hours straight to develop a cure. We saved 3 million Zephyrian lives because we acted quickly instead of waiting for the proper authorization forms. The crystalline being's colors shifted to a cooler spectrum, but it remained silent. Elena faced the Nethak Collective. You call us disruptive, but when the Crimson Raiders attacked your mining colonies in the Vega system, it was human warships that drove them off. We lost good people defending your worlds, and we did it without asking for payment or treaties in return. The buzzing from the Nethak section grew quieter, but their compound eyes continued to track her movements. Finally, she turned toward the Valdris representative. And you, Ancient Ones, you speak of chaos and instability, but when your research, stationed near the galactic core, was caught in a gravitational anomaly, it was human engineers who figured out how to stabilize the quantum field. We saved your work and your people by thinking outside the constraints of conventional physics. The energy being's form flickered slightly, the light patterns becoming more subdued. Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued. Yes, we are emotional. Yes, we act on instinct. Yes, we sometimes fight when others would negotiate. But we also love when others feel nothing. We sacrifice for strangers. We never abandon our allies, even when they abandon us. You call this chaos, but we call it humanity. She gestured toward Captain Chen. This man has saved 17 colonies from pirate attacks. He has never asked for medals or recognition. He does it because it's right. She indicated Ambassador O'Brien. This woman has negotiated peace between 12 different species. She has prevented 6 wars through patient diplomacy. She serves because she believes in the dream of galactic unity. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. You want to exile us because we make you uncomfortable. Because we remind you of something you've forgotten in your pursuit of perfect order. We remind you that sometimes the right thing to do is not the logical thing. Sometimes the best choice is not the safe choice. Sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the constant background hum of alien conversations had stopped. Elena could feel the weight of thousands of gazes upon her as she spoke her final words. If you exile humanity today, you don't just lose another species. You lose the ones who will run toward danger when everyone else runs away. You lose the ones who will fight for strangers as hard as they fight for family. You lose the ones who never give up no matter how bad things get. But most of all, you lose the ones who remember that being civilized doesn't mean being afraid to get your hands dirty when good people need help. High Magistrate Zethkar's crystalline form began to glow brighter as it prepared to deliver the council's verdict. The other representatives stirred in their seats, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of alien sounds that filled the chamber. "The Council has considered your words, Commander Vasquez," Zethkar announced. "However, the evidence of human unpredictability and potential for violence cannot be overlooked. The stability of galactic civilization must take precedence over individual species contributions." Elena felt her heart sink, but she kept her expression neutral. She had known this moment would come, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. "By unanimous vote of the three major powers," Zethkar continued, "humanity is hereby ordered to vacate all territories within the inner and middle rim sectors. You have 60 standard days to complete this evacuation. Any human presence detected in civilized space after this deadline will be considered an act of aggression and dealt with accordingly." The chamber erupted in alien voices as the representatives began discussing the implications of the decision. Some sounded pleased, others uncertain, but none spoke in humanity's defense. Elena looked over at Captain Chen and Ambassador O'Brien. Both of them maintained their composure, but she could see the pain in their eyes. 60 days to abandon everything humanity had built over 2 decades. Homes, businesses, research stations, entire colonies, all of it would have to be left behind. Furthermore, Zethkar added, raising its voice above the din, all human vessels and installations are permanently restricted to the Outer Rim territories. This exile is final and non-negotiable. Elena stepped forward one last time. "Very well," she said, her voice carrying a quiet strength that made the chamber fall silent again. "If you want us gone, we'll go. But remember this day. Remember that you chose to throw away 20 years of friendship and cooperation. Remember that when you needed help, humans were always there." She paused, looking around the chamber one final time. "And remember that the galaxy is a very big place. Today you make us your problem. Tomorrow you might discover that you need us more than we need you." The platform lowered, carrying Elena back to floor level. She walked over to her companions, and together they made their way toward the chamber's exit. As they passed through the massive doors, Elena caught a glimpse of the holographic galaxy map above them. The Outer Rim territories glowed like a distant frontier, wild and unexplored. Behind them, the representatives continued their discussions, already moving on to other business. They thought they had solved their problem with the unpredictable, humans. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. 3 weeks later, the largest fleet movement in human history began. Admiral James Morrison stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Determination, watching as thousands of ships prepared for the journey to the Outer Rim. Military vessels, civilian transports, cargo haulers, and research ships, all heading toward the frontier territories that the Council considered too dangerous for civilized species. James was a career military officer, 52 years old with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had commanded fleets in the border wars and knew how to move large numbers of ships safely through hostile space. But this was different. This wasn't a military operation or a colonization mission. This was the exodus of an entire civilization. "Admiral," reported Commander Lisa Park from her station, "the last civilian groups from Sector 12 are ready to depart. Total fleet size, 4,372 vessels." James nodded. Lisa was young for her rank, barely 30, but she had proven herself during the evacuation planning. Her analytical mind and ability to coordinate complex logistics had made the exodus possible. "Signal all ships to begin their approach to the jump point," he ordered. The evacuation was not happening peacefully. Zephyrian patrol ships shadowed the human fleets, their crystalline hulls glowing with weapon charges. Nethak interceptors buzzed around the convoy like angry wasps, their formation flying designed to intimidate and pressure the humans into moving faster. Valdris energy beings periodically materialized near human ships, scanning them for weapons or contraband. On the civilian transport New Horizon, families crowded into cramped quarters with whatever possessions they could carry. Children pressed, their faces against the viewports watching their former homes disappear behind them. Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's chief medical officer, moved through the corridors checking on passengers. She had left behind a state-of-the-art medical facility on New Geneva to help evacuate civilians who couldn't afford private transport. "Doctor, my daughter is having trouble breathing," said a worried mother holding a 6-year-old girl. The child's face was pale, and she was wheezing softly. Sarah knelt down and gently examined the girl. "She's having an anxiety reaction to the recycled air," she explained. "The ship's systems are different from the stations she's used to. I'll give her something to help her relax." As Sarah prepared a mild sedative, she thought about the research she had been forced to abandon. 5 years of work on genetic therapies, all left behind because the Council decided humans were too dangerous to remain in civilized space. The tensions came to a head when a group of Nethak interceptors moved too close to a human medical transport, carrying critical patients. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the escort destroyer Defiant, ordered the aliens to maintain a safe distance. The Nethaks responded by activating their targeting systems and demanding the medical ship submit to inspection. "Negative," Maria replied over the communications channel. "These are civilian patients being evacuated as ordered. We will not allow unnecessary delays that could cost lives." The lead Nethak pilot's voice came through in a series of clicks and mechanical translations. "Compliance is required. Resistance will be met with force." Maria looked at her tactical display. 6 Nethak interceptors against her single destroyer. In the old days, she might have backed down or called for council mediation. But there was no council mediation in Exile, and the patients on the medical transport couldn't wait for diplomatic solutions. "All weapons online," she ordered her crew. "Target the lead interceptor. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." The Nethaks must have been monitoring human communications because they suddenly backed off to a safer distance. They had expected the humans to submit to their authority, but instead found themselves facing opponents who were willing to fight for their convoys. Word of the confrontation spread through the alien patrol fleets. The humans were not behaving like defeated refugees. They were protecting their own with the same determination they had always shown, exile or no exile. As the last human ships approached the boundary between civilized space and the outer rim, Admiral Morrison opened a fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every human ship in the convoy, from the largest battle cruiser to the smallest family transport. "People of Earth and her colonies," he began. "Today we leave behind the homes we built and the lives we made in civilized space. The Galactic Council has decided that humanity is too dangerous, too unpredictable, too chaotic to remain among the established powers." He paused, looking out at the ships stretching into the distance like a river of metal and light. "They're wrong about us being chaotic, but they're right about us being dangerous. We're dangerous to anyone who threatens innocent people. We're dangerous to anyone who preys on the weak. We're dangerous to anyone who thinks they can bully us into submission." The massive gates that marked the boundary between civilized space and the outer rim began to open, revealing the darkness beyond. The frontier territories stretched out before them like an ocean of stars, filled with unknown dangers and untapped possibilities. "The Council thinks they're getting rid of a problem," Morrison continued. "But they're about to discover that they've made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They've taken the most adaptable, most determined, most resourceful species in the galaxy and given us a blank canvas to work with." The first human ships passed through the boundary, crossing from the ordered civilization of the inner rim into the lawless expanse of the frontier. Behind them, the gates began to close with a sound that echoed through space itself. "Welcome to the outer rim," Morrison said as his own ship crossed the threshold. "Let's show the galaxy what humans can build when nobody's watching." The great exodus was complete. Humanity had been cast out into the wilderness. The aliens thought they had solved their problem with the aggressive, unpredictable humans. They had no idea that they had just given Earth's children exactly what they needed to become something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. In the darkness of the outer rim, humanity was about to discover its true potential. Rise of the Shadow Empire. 5 years had passed since the last human ship crossed into the outer rim, and the galaxy had almost forgotten about the exiled species. The Galactic Council continued its business of maintaining order and stability among the civilized worlds. Trade flowed smoothly between the great powers. Disputes were settled through proper diplomatic channels, and the dangerous frontier territories remained safely ignored. But in the darkness beyond the rim gates, something extraordinary was taking shape. Admiral James Morrison stood in the command center of Bastion Station, humanity's first major stronghold in the Outer Rim. The massive space station hung in orbit around a resource-rich planet the humans had named Liberty Prime. Through the reinforced windows of the command deck, James could see the sprawling industrial complex that had grown around the station like a metal garden. Shipyards, refineries, research facilities, and defensive platforms stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. James had aged in the 5 years since the Exodus. His steel-gray hair had turned white, and new lines marked his weathered face. But his eyes burned with the same determination that had carried humanity through their darkest hour. At 67, he commanded the largest military force in the Outer Rim, and possibly the most advanced fleet humanity had ever assembled. "Admiral," reported Captain Elena Rodriguez from her position at the tactical station. "The patrol squadrons are reporting all sectors clear. The Black Fang pirates haven't been seen in this system for 3 months." Elena was one of the young officers who had risen through the ranks during the exile years. She was tough, smart, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting human interests. James nodded approvingly. The Black Fang pirates had been one of the most feared criminal organizations in the Outer Rim until they made the mistake of attacking a human colony transport. That had been 4 years ago. Within 6 months, human forces had tracked down every Black Fang base, captured or killed every pirate in their organization, and scattered their assets to the stellar winds. The lesson had spread quickly through the criminal underworld. Humans were not prey. "What's the status of the research projects?" James asked. Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her datapad. Lisa had been promoted to head of the Human Research Initiative after her brilliant work during the evacuation. At 35, she was the youngest department head in human space, but her contributions to their technological advancement had been invaluable. Her short black hair was often messy from long hours in the laboratory, and her thick glasses reflected the glow of countless computer screens. "The quantum drive project is ahead of schedule," she reported with barely contained excitement. "We should have the first prototype ready for testing within 2 months. If the calculations are correct, we'll be able to travel between star systems in hours instead of days." James allowed himself a small smile. The quantum drive technology was based on principles that the Valdris Republic had dismissed as theoretically impossible. Human scientists had not only proven the theory, but they were on the verge of making it practical reality. "What about the other projects?" he asked. Lisa's eyes lit up. "The nanofabrication systems are operational on 12 colonies. We can now build anything from basic tools to advanced electronics using raw materials and energy. The terraforming accelerators have reduced planet modification time from centuries to decades. And the most exciting development—" She paused, glancing around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "The consciousness transfer experiments have been successful. We can now back up and restore human memories and personalities. Death is becoming optional." James felt a chill run down his spine. That technology alone would revolutionize human civilization, but it also represented a level of advancement that would terrify the Galactic Council if they knew about it. General Alex Rivera entered the command center, his heavy boots echoing against the metal decking. Alex was a mountain of a man, standing nearly 7 feet tall with shoulders that could barely fit through doorways. His dark skin was crisscrossed with scars from battles in the Outer Rim, and his black hair was kept in a military buzz cut. He commanded the Frontier Guard, humanity's elite special forces unit that operated in the deepest, most dangerous regions of unexplored space. "Admiral," Alex said in his gravelly voice, "we just received intelligence from our deep-range scouts. The Galactic Council is having problems." James raised an eyebrow. "What kind of problems?" Alex activated a holographic display that showed the Inner Rim territories. Red markers indicated areas of conflict or instability. The Zephyrian Empire is facing rebellion in 17 star systems. Their crystalline order is breaking down because they can't adapt to changing conditions. The Nethek Collective has lost 3 entire hive clusters to some kind of plague that targets their shared consciousness. And the Valdris Republic is dealing with quantum storms that are disrupting their energy-based existence. James studied the display with growing interest. Any theories about what's causing all this? Alex grinned, showing teeth that had been replaced with military-grade ceramics after a particularly brutal fight with space pirates. Our xenobiologists think the galaxy is going through a natural evolutionary shift. The stable, ordered civilizations are having trouble adapting to new environmental pressures, but there's more. He zoomed the display to show the boundary between civilized space and the outer rim. Council patrol activity near the rim gates has increased by 300% in the last 6 months. They're scared of something, and our intelligence suggests they're starting to realize they might have made a mistake exiling us. Dr. Park looked up from her calculations. That makes sense from a mathematical perspective. Human adaptability was one of our key advantages in the old galactic community. Without us, the Council has lost their primary source of innovative solutions to unexpected problems. Before James could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the station's communications officer, looked up from her console with wide eyes. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the rim gates. It's from the Galactic Council. The main display activated, showing the familiar crystalline form of High Magistrate Zethkar. The being's colors were much dimmer than James remembered, and its harmonious tones carried an undertone of desperation. Humans of the Outer Rim, Zethkar began. The Galactic Council requests an emergency diplomatic meeting. We need to discuss recent developments in galactic security. James looked around the command center at his officers. Elena was trying to hide a smirk. Lisa looked fascinated by the political implications. Alex was openly grinning with predatory satisfaction. Interesting timing, James said dryly. Signal the council that we'll consider their request, but any meeting will be held in neutral space with human security under human terms. Lieutenant Kim looked uncertain. Sir, should I really tell the Galactic Council that they have to follow our conditions? Yes, James replied firmly. Things have changed, Lieutenant. It's time they learned that. 3 days later, Admiral Morrison's flagship Sovereignty arrived at the designated meeting coordinates in the buffer zone between civilized space and the Outer Rim. The massive dreadnought was unlike any ship the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was composed of adaptive metamaterials that could shift between stealth mode and combat configuration. Its weapons systems included particle beam arrays, quantum torpedoes, and something the humans called reality disruptors that could literally delete matter from existence. Accompanying the flagship were 12 escort vessels that demonstrated the diversity of human technological advancement. Some ships appeared to be made of pure energy, others seemed to bend light around themselves like living shadows, and one looked like it was constructed from crystallized time itself. The council delegation arrived in more traditional vessels. High Magistrate Zethkar's crystal ship reflected light in patterns that had once been beautiful, but now seemed somehow faded. The Nethak Collective's hive ship buzzed with the activity of millions of insectoid beings, but their formations seemed disorganized and anxious. The Valdris Republic's energy vessel flickered uncertainly, its usual brilliant glow reduced to a dim shimmer. The meeting took place aboard Sovereignty, in a conference room that had been designed to intimidate. The walls displayed real-time images of human colonies, fleets, and industrial facilities throughout the Outer Rim. Holographic charts showed population growth, technological development, and military strength that far exceeded anything the Council had imagined possible. Admiral Morrison entered the room wearing a uniform that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself. The dark material was embedded with microlights that twinkled like stars, and his insignia appeared to be made of solidified starlight. Behind him walked Dr. Park in a research coat that shimmered with equations and formulas that rearranged themselves as she moved. General Rivera wore combat armor that looked like it had been forged from the core of a collapsed star. High Magistrate Zethkar's crystalline form had lost much of its former brilliance. The being's harmonic voice carried undertones of stress and fatigue. Admiral Morrison, we thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Recent developments have created complications that require immediate attention. Such as? Morrison asked, taking his seat at the head of the conference table. The Nethak Collective's representative scuttled forward on multiple legs, its compound eyes reflecting the room's lights in fragmented patterns. Pirate activity has increased by 400% since your exile. It clicked and buzzed. Criminal organizations that were previously contained are now expanding into civilized space. Our patrol fleets cannot manage the increased threat level. Admiral Morrison exchanged a glance with General Rivera. The humans had been systematically eliminating pirate organizations throughout the Outer Rim, but apparently their success was having unexpected consequences in civilized space. The Valdris representative materialized more solidly, its energy form struggling to maintain coherence. Technological stagnation affects all Council species. Innovation rates have declined 67% in 5 standard years. Research projects that previously showed promise have been abandoned due to lack of creative solutions. Dr. Park leaned forward, her glasses reflecting data streams that only she could see. That's what happens when you exile the species that was providing most of your breakthrough innovations. Human intuitive problem-solving was filling gaps in your logical methodologies. High Magistrate Zethkar's colors shifted to deeper, more somber tones. We have also detected anomalous readings from the galactic core. Something is approaching our space from the intergalactic void. Our analysis indicates a massive technological civilization of unknown origin and potentially hostile intent. The room fell silent. Morrison looked at his advisors, reading the concern in their expressions. An intergalactic invasion was beyond anything the current council could handle, especially in their weakened state. Show us the data, Morrison said finally. The holographic display activated, showing long-range sensor readings from the galactic edge. Massive geometric shapes moved through the void between galaxies, each one larger than a star system. Energy signatures suggested technology that operated on principles unknown to any current galactic civilization. Preliminary analysis indicates they will reach the outer territories of our galaxy within 18 months, Zethkar continued. Their capabilities appear to exceed anything in our military arsenals. General Rivera studied the tactical information with professional interest. How many ships in your combined fleets? Approximately 40,000 vessels across all Council species, the Nethak representative replied. Rivera looked at Admiral Morrison and shook his head slightly. Morrison understood the meaning. 40,000 traditional Council ships would be slaughtered by whatever was coming from outside the galaxy. What exactly are you asking us to do? Morrison asked. The 3 Council representatives exchanged glances among themselves. Finally, High Magistrate Zethkar spoke with obvious difficulty. We are requesting that humanity consider returning to civilized space to assist in galactic defense preparations. Dr. Park laughed, a sound that carried no humor. You want us to come back and save you from the consequences of your own short-sighted policies? The survival of galactic civilization is at stake, the Valdris being projected urgently. Past disagreements must be set aside for the greater good. Morrison stood up slowly, his starfield uniform shifting patterns like a living galaxy. 5 years ago, you called us dangerous, unpredictable, and too violent for civilized society. You exiled us to the frontier because you were afraid of what we might become. Well, congratulations. You were right to be afraid. He gestured to the wall displays showing human achievements in the Outer Rim. We've built something out here that you can't even comprehend. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. Our military could conquer every Council world in a matter of months. Our colonies are more prosperous and advanced than anything in civilized space. The Council representative seemed to shrink back from his presence. High Magistrate Zethkar's crystalline form flickered with unstable light patterns. But here's the thing about humans, Morrison continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. We don't abandon our friends, even when they abandon us. We don't let innocent people die because of political convenience. And we don't let bullies threaten our galaxy no matter where they come from. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the conference table. Humanity will defend this galaxy from the intergalactic threat, but not as your subordinates, not as your junior partners, and definitely not as grateful exiles begging for readmission to your club. Morrison straightened to his full height, and for a moment he seemed to fill the entire room with his presence. We'll defend the galaxy as its rightful leaders. The age of council dominance is over. The age of humanity has begun. The holographic displays changed to show the true scope of human expansion. Thousands of hidden colonies, massive industrial complexes, fleets that dwarfed anything in council space, and technologies that seemed to border on magic. The Outer Rim wasn't a wilderness anymore. It was the heart of a new galactic superpower. You have a choice, Morrison said to the stunned council representatives. You can accept human leadership and work with us to defend our galaxy, or you can try to handle the invasion on your own, while we protect our own interests. But understand this, the galaxy belongs to humanity now. We're not asking for permission anymore. High Magistrate Zethkar's voice was barely a whisper. What are your terms? Morrison smiled, and the expression was both reassuring and terrifying. Dissolution of the current Galactic Council, recognition of human authority over all military operations, complete access to Council databases and technologies, and most importantly, an apology. The three alien representatives sat in stunned silence. The same species they had exiled as too dangerous for civilized space was now demanding they surrender their entire civilization. You have 24 hours to decide, Morrison continued. After that, we begin preparing for the invasion, without you. And when it's over, when we've saved this galaxy from destruction, everyone will know that humanity did it alone while the great council powers cowered behind their borders. General Rivera stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the alien delegates. I'd choose quickly if I were you, the admiral's being generous. Personally, I think we should let the invaders have civilized space and just protect our own territory. Dr. Park looked up from her calculations. Actually, from a strategic standpoint, it would be more efficient to— They get the point, Morrison interrupted with a slight smile. High Magistrate Zethkar's crystalline form began to flicker rapidly, a sign of extreme stress among the Zephyrians. This is not how civilized beings conduct diplomacy. You're right, Morrison agreed. Civilized beings don't exile their allies for being too effective. Civilized beings don't let pride blind them to reality. And civilized beings certainly don't wait until disaster strikes to admit their mistakes. The Admiral moved to the window, looking out at his fleet of impossible ships. But we're not civilized beings, are we? We're humans. We're the dangerous, unpredictable species that you were so afraid of. And now we're the only thing standing between this galaxy and complete annihilation. 6 months later, the first intergalactic invasion force reached the outer edge of the galaxy. They found humanity waiting for them, not hiding behind defensive lines or negotiating for mercy, but advancing to meet them in open space with weapons that redefined the laws of physics. The war lasted 3 weeks. When it was over, the invaders had been completely destroyed, their technology absorbed and their threat eliminated forever. The galaxy was safe, protected by the same species that had been exiled for being too violent and unpredictable. The Galactic Council was disbanded. In its place, humanity established the Terran Commonwealth, a government that valued innovation over order, courage over caution, and results over procedure. High Magistrate Zethkar, now serving as an advisor to the human leadership, often reflected on the irony of their situation. They had exiled humanity to protect galactic civilization. Instead, they had created the force that would ultimately save it and inherit it. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. And in the depths of space, human ships continued to patrol the galactic boundaries, protecting a civilization that had once rejected them, but now depended on them completely. They were still dangerous, still unpredictable, still willing to fight when others would negotiate. They were still human. And now that was exactly what the galaxy needed them to be.